Good afternoon. Welcome to the August 10th Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting for the City of Minneapolis. My name is Jacob Softly. I'm the Vice Chair of this board. I'll be presiding over the meeting today in the absence of Chair Perry. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Thank you. Board members Grants, Korsch, Hutchins, and Perry will be absent this evening. Board member Callahan. Present. Ingram.
Here.
Johannesson.
Aye.
Softly.
Aye.
Smikatova.
Here.
Wang.
Here.
We have 6 members present.
Okay, with that we have quorum and the body is capable of doing business today. Everyone's had a chance to look at the agenda. I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. With that, the agenda is approved. You've all seen the minutes from the meeting from our, I'm forgetting the date, our last meeting. If there's any changes, please indicate now. Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes.
So moved.
There's a motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion passes, and the minutes from the prior meeting are approved. Mr. Ellis, are there any petitions or communications?
Vice Chair Softly, members of the board, there is one communication this evening. There has been appeal of the board's decision denying the variances for 2110 4th Street Northeast, which was for maximum floor area ratio and garage width. That will be going here soon to the Business Inspections, Housing and Zoning Committee. I believe it will occur on the 22nd, I believe.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ellis. All right, that brings us to our public hearing. I'll open the public hearing at this time. I'll remind everyone in the chamber, board and audience, to make sure your cell phones and any other devices are turned off or in the silent mode so we don't hear them go off. If you're here to speak during the public hearing, please sign up on the table up there, indicate your name and your address. Also do so before you take the podium and begin your presentation. We'll start with a staff presentation, followed by the applicant, followed by any who are in favor of the application, and then any who are opposed to the application. Please give your testimony one at a time, so we're not alternating between different folks giving testimony. It makes it hard for the transcriber to determine who's speaking. With that, Ms. Roman. And before you begin, let me clarify. The item on the agenda today, I should slow down for a minute. Item number 5 is 4221 Ewing Avenue South. This is a determination of a decision of the zoning administrator. And with that, Ms. Roman.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Softly, members of the board. This is item number 5, a determination of the zoning administrator for offense. The full determination is a determination of the zoning administrator that the fence side, where the fencing material only is visible, constitutes the finished side of the fence, and the fence side that contains horizontal and vertical fence supports and in-ground fence posts constitutes the unfinished side of the fence. So the subject site is 4221 Ewing Avenue South. This is a 6,096 square foot interior lot. There is an existing single-family dwelling on the property that was constructed in 2007 with an attached garage. The property is zoned UN1 Urban Neighborhood 1, BF1 Interior 1 Built Form Overlay District, and the property is also located within the Shoreland Overlay District. The surrounding neighborhood is zoned UN1 Urban Neighborhood 1 and UN2 Urban Neighborhood 2. Surrounding uses are primarily single-family and two-family dwellings. In October of 2022, the city received a complaint that the appellant had constructed a fence where the unfinished side of the fence faced adjacent properties, so the properties to the rear and to the side. During inspection for the complaint, several code violation issues were identified on the property relating to fencing and also to retaining walls on the property. Zoning code enforcement issued an enforcement violation that was included in your packets on October 17th, 2022. This violation stated that the fence that was constructed on the property was in violation of fence height ordinance, fence material ordinance, and that the fence was constructed with the unfinished side facing the exterior property lines. Following the citation, the homeowner reached out to the city with the intent of applying for variances in order to maintain the fence that exists today. Section 535-430, fence design of the Minneapolis Code of Ordinances is not one of the provisions that can be varied in code, so it does require an appeal of a determination of a zoning administrator. The zoning administrator issued a determination addressing the applicant's assertion that the fence on the subject property was constructed in a manner that complies with all fence design requirements in code. And then the appellant then filed an appeal of the decision of the zoning administrator, which is the application that we're reviewing tonight. The appellant filed an appeal of the decision regarding the intent of the word finished, which within the zoning code provision for fence design requiring that fences must be erected in a manner where the finished side or sides of the fence must face adjacent property or public right-of-way. The appellant has stated that the code is sufficiently subjective regarding finished side of the fence, that it required the inspector to clarify that the supporting post needed to face one's house and not the neighbor's, and that code clarity intent is further that posts are allowed to be visible in fence design, where the fence is roughly the same on both sides. And further, that since fences are exempt from normal permitting, it is left up to the fence designer or builder to make that judgment regarding the design and the particulars of a site. The appellant is arguing tonight that the fence should be allowed to be retained as it exists today because the chosen design further enhances the subject site and the surrounding area as well. Staff findings related to this application are fourfold. The first is just a citation of the Minneapolis zoning code regarding posts and supporting members. The second finding is for the purpose of administrating the zoning ordinance that we use common usage. In other words, that we refer to a dictionary definition of a term. So our zoning code does not define the words finished. So we refer to the Merriam-Webster dictionary definition for the word finished, which reads, brought to a completed state and provided with a finish, having a final treatment or coating on the surface. And staff believes that this clearly indicates that code is written in such a way as to require that the face or the finished side of a fence should project outwards, and that the back or the unfinished side of the fence should face the interior of the lot towards the property owner's home. The third finding is that the intent of fence code is to promote public health, safety, and welfare, and also to encourage an aesthetic environment. The requirement that posts and supporting members are erected in a manner so as not to face an adjacent property is considered an aesthetic that is supportable for an aesthetic environment throughout the city. The fourth finding relates to photographs from code enforcement that show that one side of the fence does contain all of the support structures, and while the other is clearly covered with a decorative metal coating. So the recommendation before the board tonight is that the Zoning Board of Adjustment denies the appeal of the decision of the zoning administrator's determination. Essentially, we would agree with staff's perspective that the finished side of the fence in this case is facing inward and that the unfinished side of the fence is facing outwards towards the property lines and then the neighbors in this case. So I will stand for questions, and then the appellant is here tonight to present as well.
Thank you, Ms. Roman. Are there any questions for staff? I see none. Thank you. Is the applicant here? And would you like to speak, sir?
It might be more productive so I can answer Ms. Roman's issues as well as the complainant's issues at the same time if they go before I do. I'm happy to do it, but I'd probably end up wanting to come back and address their concerns as well too. I have never actually heard what it is that they personally have an issue with our fence because they refuse to talk to me about it.
Okay, so for the record, the applicant would like to have the challengers speak before he does. I see no problem with that. Those who are opposed to the presentation, or to the application, would you present your rationale? Please wait until you approach the microphone so we can record everything.
My name's Charles McCoy. Thank you for the opportunity to present. I do have handouts of our concern, and you probably have seen this, including a picture which I think demonstrates very clearly the two fences. And the one fence is our fence, which is built according to code. And we only built the fence in reaction to what we saw they were doing. So one of the questions that is raised is that, well, after all, they have a fence up, so can't we do what we want? And I would say, we saw what you were doing, so we built a fence so we wouldn't have to look at it. We haven't been completely successful, but that's why that fence is there. It came in response to what they were building. If you wanted to see the response, you
That'd
could.
be great. Thank you.
And then the second thing is, just because we have a fence, that's not a reason to allow them not to follow the code. And I don't really have any more to say. I'm not an architect. Both of our neighbors are architects. We have had to go through a steep learning curve and to get legal support to understand what our rights were and how to protect the interests of not only of ourselves, but of our neighborhood. And this is the best we can do. So that's all I have to say. This is my wife, Beverly. She's here with me. And thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McCoy. Is there anyone else here to speak in opposition of the application? All right, ma'am, please come up and speak.
I'm Lynn Nystuen, and I live about 3 houses down from the subject property at 4309.
Could you say your name one more time?
Lynn Nystuen, and I will
Thank
note
you.
that I sent my remarks to Sarah. Thank you, Sarah. So I'll try to keep this brief. I'd like to thank the city of Minneapolis for their time in reviewing the appeal and decision to deny. I want to thank my neighbors, Bev and Charlie, for taking time to address the issue with the city. I think it's in the neighborhood's best interest to follow zoning code standards, and if necessary, ask for a variance in advance of the deviation. It appears after reviewing the appeal application that a variance was not requested ahead of the installation. And by the way, it turns out I can see the fence from my house too, and it looks to be facing the wrong way. This is the real reason I'm here today. We have many new construction projects taking place in our neighborhood, and specifically on our street right now. And they're all expected to follow zoning policy and standards. I think equitable enforcement by the city is important because this helps safeguard our community's character and safety for all residents. As such, I would like to see the city uphold the denial and work with the residents at 4221 to bring the fence or screens in question up to code. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else that'd like to speak in opposition of the application? Seeing nobody, would the applicant like to testify?
Sure. Is your presentation on here? Hi, by the way. It's nice to meet you in person. It is. Do you want to reference it? Yeah, it's probably just easiest just to pull that up rather than connect up to that.
I also have the staff report as well.
Yeah, it's, I think just the photos, because that's what I, are these, basically just click on these guys here.
Correct.
Great, and so this is yours, and you, I'm sorry, do you have our documents that we submitted? It was part of the online package, I can plug mine.
I have your attachments in the staff report.
That would be awesome.
And sir, what is your name and
Great.
address for the record?
And test, that's perfect. Let's see, can we make that full screen too? I'm very needy, apparently. All right, great. Hi, I'm Jeffrey Warner, and I live at the subject property. For a point of clarification, Lynn, do you live on Ewing or do you live on? I'm on Ewing. On Ewing, great. To the north, right?
No.
To the south. Okay, great.
Please keep the testimony directed to the board. Thank you.
Pardon me, I was just trying to clarify because I'm just trying to get caught up with sort of who we're addressing here. What you're seeing here, so let me give some context to sort of the whole project as a whole, sort of why we would build fences at all, what our sort of goals were in sort of moving into this house, 4 years ago now. what you're seeing here is this does not have the before pictures, but what you're seeing here is our house. The brown in the 3D rendering represents weathering steel with a custom brake, and it weathers organically. And the black material represents a vertical salvaged cedar siding, which has been stained with pine tar from the original siding. And so when we moved in to upgrade the house and to make it more energy efficient, more sustainable, we increased the level of insulation in our house, salvaged the materials we could from the house, and replaced fiber cement with the weathering steel, an actual steel material which will have extremely long life duty and also be recyclable at the end of its lifetime when the zoning codes are changed again. As part of this sort of process, we covered the existing masonry unit wall, which we found to be fairly hideous in the front of the house. And what you're seeing here, and what undoubtedly you'll hear in the next variance, which we were required to apply for, is sort of some of the issues regarding that. However, be it may, what our goal was is to, in renovating and treating the landscape that had been neglected for decades, we sought to bring the materials from the house into the landscape so that it basically had a very organic and, we were designing the landscape and the house to work together, which I think is probably an admirable thing for most projects to do. However, since most projects also do not contain weathering steel in a corrugated, a sort of a custom corrugated material, what you're seeing here is the result of our sort of design studies and the architectonics of this fence. And how are we going to do this? How are we going to make this fence basically stand up, number one, and then basically sort of embrace the materials in the house? And so what you are seeing is these, in this case, the back side or the second side of the fence. In the middle is the sort of the condition of the fence at the time of the complaint. And then after working with the city, on the right-hand side, you're seeing the materials after they've been treated with an oxidizing paint, which is actually filled with real iron filings, and they weather naturally just with the other side of the fence. What you're seeing down below is a neighbor's just down the street's fence, which clearly shows horizontal members and top members and then post exposed. Okay, you'll see if you look carefully, these supports are made out of galvanized steel. They're very robust. They are set within the thickness of the fence, and in fact, after being oxidized with the iron, they're almost indistinguishable from the corrugations in the material itself, and that was the goal. This shows the condition in the rear yard. You've seen these. You probably saw, the photos that the McCoys shared makes it look like this is the backside of a movie theater looking right into their house. We were absolutely aware of their concerns from since the first month we moved in, that we were going to have to communicate with them proactively, early and often. And it is apparently because of this that they built their fence. They did not even let us know they were building their fence, even though they were extremely concerned about all the things we were doing. I know from experience that it doesn't matter what 9 people out of 10 say about your house. If it's fabulous, there's going to be at least 1 or 2 people who hate it just as much as the other people like it. So I'm not going to pretend that I could ever make everybody happy. We're just doing what it is that we've done in the rest of our practice, and trying to basically, make the project the way we want to, but also very concerned about the impacts, and I think actually have received recognition for the impacts we've had on both the environment and also the way our projects attempt to fit into the context of both urban and exurban, wherever they may be. What you're seeing here is screens, which are actually reduced in size. Our original intent in sharing it with McCoy's was to have a couple strategically placed screens, which basically just, hide our view of their garage. When they put up their fence as a surprise one week, it's about 100 feet long or something, we didn't have to look at their garage, but we did have to look at their fence. And I don't mean to go on forever about this, but what you're looking at here is these screens placed about 6 inches away from the property line. Their fence is also placed about 6 inches away from the property line. And the result is that the only way you can see the back side of the fence facing the complainant's side is that you would have to, literally probably be walking on our property to do so. This is intentional on our part. We actually kept the post to sort of minimize any disturbance on their side and recognizing that there may indeed have been this exact complaint. We kept the support posts down below the top of the steel by about 18 inches. And because they're set in within the width, we were also able to then drop the support, the horizontal members equally, and so that unless they basically trespassed on our property, they are not able to see anything other than the so-called finished material from their property. You can see here from the rear yard photo here what we're seeing, and essentially what they're seeing from their yard as well too. We, as part of the process, we did talk to our neighbors, because we talk to our neighbors mostly. Apparently I haven't talked to you, Lynn, but we got petitions signed by, I think, 8 of our surrounding properties who all expressed support for it. What you're seeing here on the last page is really the property impacted most by our project. And Adam and Jenna, are in the winter time. Obviously this tree isn't here, but we specifically left that tree at their request when we were actually going to take it down as we planted a grove in there. But you basically can't see any of the features that are supposedly impactful to our neighbors. And then this shows you how far it is from the street in the wintertime when supposedly visible. You can zoom in there and you see almost less of that altogether. The other thing is just the context about why we would have screens. Let me just show you, without getting into it too much. We intentionally kept, on these sides, we kept the structure low, as I sort of mentioned before. We moved these screens back off of the rear property line to respect the idea that whether it's our yard or not, there's still a landscape component which impacts our rear neighbor. We were not asked to do that. We did that because we thought it was the right thing to do. It creates a stepping down kind of the whole landscape in a way that supports the plinthing of our yard. And in that way, I overlooked what might have been actually any objections they might have had against the so-called backside of the fence, because they were set back in a way that was, significant. It's not like right up against their kitchen window or bedroom window or something like that. I think with that, the only other thing is you can see a little bit here. These garages are here. Our neighbors over here, George and Nancy, have a fence as well. And in fact, the screens or the fence from Mr. and Mrs. Coy is along this side. So the last things we tried to do is basically, as their fence steps down the hill, we didn't love it. We did not complain about their fence. We basically built a couple screens which cleans up our yard in terms of the whole kind of collective interior of the yard in a way that we felt addressed what we could do about looking at their fence rather than going and complaining their fence and asking that there be something to do with it. Likewise, you can see our neighbors to the rear. I mean, you know, it's a dump zone behind there, as a lot of garages are. I mean, there's a very common issue, and our neighbors, George and Nancy, really could not be nicer people, have a fence which is basically falling down and which is absolutely allowed by code. And, you know, we basically put in these screens to just basically manage that whole situation. And I think with that, I can answer other questions, but that's probably more than we all wanted to listen to at this point. I guess maybe the only other point is, like, in any time we were sort of, I apologize for the history in terms of, like, trying to avoid these things ahead of time through asking for variance. Actually sort of happens through the permit process. And did I deal with you before on our questions before we built our fence? You're somebody else in the office. Basically, we said, like, great, I've got this thing. How can we sort of deal with this? What are we allowed to do? I should know all of the codes. There's a lot of codes, and they're, as I said, somewhat subjective. I can kind of go into those a little bit more detail, but I don't know if it's actually necessary. But basically, we tried to ask the right questions. We tried to get the permits we needed. It was very unclear that we were going to need any variances to do what we wanted to do, because I frankly didn't understand this. I mean, I'm looking at the other precedents from the other fences in relation to what we wanted to do seem like, I guess I don't see what the issue is, right? Because we have support members, but they're architectonic. We like them. I can understand other people don't. The issues for, like, basically it kind of comes down into, if I wanted to have both sides of the fence look exactly the same way, I could do that, and we still can do that. I think then the final thing is that I could do that, but I'm not sure who this serves, and the difficulty and the kind of sustainability of going in and tearing these things apart and rebuilding in the way that is agreeable with the city's blessing at this point seems, I'm not sure who this is going to benefit, frankly. And I certainly don't want to either pay for it or take the time to do it, and it's likely going to be me doing that work. So I guess I went on a little longer than 10 minutes ago when I said I was going to stop. So
That's all right. Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Warner. I have one question for you. Do the vertical metal beams and do the horizontal beams fulfill a support function?
Yes. I mean, the so-called decorative face of the fence is actually the structural face of the fence. Because it's corrugated, because it pieces all together, it is actually structural, but it needs something to basically place it into the ground. And so these posts are actually interestingly because they're made out of metal, they can be made much more slender than a 4x4 or a 6x6 post, but they're also going to last a heck of a lot longer. And one of the problems with fences in general is that they're wood. They get placed in concrete because that is the easiest way to do them, but they have a lifespan of about 10 years, maybe. It depends on the soil, a lot of different things. They rot right at that concrete. This is a way to get around that. We expect our fence to stay straight for 30 years or whatever that is going to be. And that is really the intent of sort of using this kind of system, while also trying to, like, understand how we can still, make something which is aesthetically pleasing to our neighbors as well as us, which again, of course, is subjective. So.
Okay, thank you for answering that question. Does anyone on the board have any questions for the applicant? Yes, Ms. Mikurova.
Hi, can you speak at all to the definition of finish and finished?
Yeah, so I used the word architectonic before, and architecture with a small or a capital A, however you want to say it, without being sort of elitist, is like a lot of this is about the things that go into the building and how the structure and how the skin is all working together to just kind of make some sense so that you understand it, but can also appreciate how those materials come together. So in this case, I would say that you can see let me show you the before and after picture from I put this together and spent enough time doing it, you would think I would know where it is. You can see the sort of the before and after. One of the questions we had is how in practice, how the wood and how the galvanized steel would work together with the weathering steel. And through conversations with the city, it seemed like it was going to be acceptable for us to treat the posts and the horizontals with an oxidized paint that would basically bring all this into one finish, if you want to put it that way. And so this was our kind of concession into that process, and for whatever reason, something happened in there that made that not acceptable, and that's why we're here right now.
Thank you.
I might say that the other picture here is our front yard, and down here you can get a sense for, I mean, this is just the top of these stairs, you can get a sense of how minimal that impact is. There's both wood and the exposed posts on here, you know, which we do look at. I mean, I think it's cool, but again, they can both be finished and be different, but that is apparently a reading of the zoning code, which makes it difficult for somebody like us wanting to do something which is authentic, potentially, I don't know. If you don't want to do the dog-eared fence cedar things, which are probably the cheapest way to do it, which are allowed by code, you can run into issues in terms of these very questions about what actually is acceptable and not. In fact, the first complaint by city's own staff, they had said that we had materials which weren't allowed. And one of the things we pointed out is we absolutely complied with that aspect of it, and we very intentionally used only steel and only wood, despite what, you know, staff saying we were allowed to do. So, I mean, I think it just goes to show that you can actually be part of the city system and still have some of these problems about what actually you're allowed to do or not. And so it's not surprising to me that when I asked certain questions up front, I was not necessarily given all the necessary information to then sort of proactively address these things before they became a problem. I mean, we've applied for a lot of variances ahead of time. I'm sorry for wasting your time here or taking up your valuable time on something which ideally would have been handled ahead of time. This is exactly the first one that I would have had to do retroactively on a project, so I apologize for that.
All right, are there any other questions for the applicant? Mr. Johannesson.
Thanks, Vice Chair. Thanks for your presentation. I guess you noted earlier you had reached out to the city to talk about fences. Did they give you the PDF or the location of the PDF that explains the fences?
Yeah.
And their heights and the code and the variance, you know, I mean, and the code issues about the finished side and the unfinished side?
Yeah, I mean, as these things become, there's, you know, 50 things that you kind of consider. It's absolutely my responsibility to you know, address them and then follow through them. And I've given you some of the reasons why it was unclear to me that I wasn't like it was going to be that important, or that there would be a complaint against something that somebody basically can't see, for example, and how that then could get blown up into something that then requires, you know, 40 people's time and effort reviewing when you include our neighborhood and my neighbors and all the people who are here today, if you know what I mean. So,
I mean, I think part of our consideration would be if the McCoys would leave and their new owners would come in and tear their fence down because they didn't want a fence, they would see your fence.
yeah, at that point I can do something different. Originally we had just a few screens. We did not want to build a big wall around. You can see from this design that it was absolutely our intention to box in the yard in a way. You can see just the original design in blue versus what we built in red. We reduced it. It was our intention to leave our landscape and their landscape to extend the views through, like the woods, if you will, into each other's trees. I mean, it's not my intention to build a beautiful grove and not have anybody see it by myself. I mean, the grove is going to be almost more visible to our neighbors in the rear, as well as provide, you know, habitat, as well as be a carbon sink, right? And as well as it would be potentially if the if our neighbors wouldn't have built their fence back there, they could have sat back there like they used to and enjoyed that grove even more than we would in that location. We never, unfortunately, had a direct conversation about that, and so I really couldn't divert from what you've seen we've done here.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Callahan?
So in terms of, I think we're all like piecing together the timeline of how this project has evolved. And so one of the points that you clarified was that the McCoys had built their fence prior to you putting in the screens. And so I think my question is now, what is it screening? Like, I guess, what is the purpose? Is it serving a specific purpose now that you've put in those screens? Or I guess like wanting to understand more around the rationale of even installing those
Right, I mean, you, well, you can see here, I don't know how easy it is to zoom in. Let's just try to zoom in on this one, the top part of this, I guess. I mean, you can see how it steps down. We didn't intend weathered cedar as to be part of our backyard. We could build a fence all the way across there. As it steps, there's, our land sort of steps down, theirs steps down, theirs takes jogs, which we were like, great, I'd like to just kind of clean up some of those things. We built our screens. There's an 8-foot and a 10-foot wide screen here. It's like directly at the same height as there. So you can see it here. In fact, their finials sit up fire. They're the finials that are actually still on the house, on the fence that was built a year ago and haven't fallen off, that is. And, the other thing they complained about, it was too high. And city supported them on that to this point because city has to basically follow the letter, not the intent or not the actual outcome of the code. I totally understand that. So it was through these things, as well as the thing in the front, which had to do with encroachment and had to do with us needing a life safety guardrail component to the stairs, that were all kind of part of the same project.
Are there any other questions for the applicant? Oh, sure, Mr. Ingraham.
Thank you. Looking at the treatment between the two, can you talk about a little bit of your communication with staff and you going into the treatment? What did they tell you about the finished after you treated it or before you treated it?
Yeah, what's Steve's last name? Inspector Weckman. So Mr. Weckman visited our site 2 or 3 times or something, besides the time when he came over to visit the McCoys. And, we walked through it and, kind of talked about everything and sort of talked about like, great, I just said like, what's your problem, not what's your problem, but like, how can we sort of work through this? And so that this is where this sort of issue about treating the wood, even though it was the same colors as what the steel was going to be, treating it with this paint was a verbal conversation. Ms. Roman, it's not really her job, I think, or like wasn't her role to kind of like interface with that, so we didn't really talk about it very much. I mean, a little bit, I'm sure, through the applications and whatnot. And I mean, again, we tried to be proactive and do things which we think are going to resolve something anyway, right? And so I said, great. I was unsure whether we were going to do the posts, and we did it when the weather finally kind of clocked through to summer, and when we could actually paint and do that. I did that, and it seemed like it was going to be effective, but it's not like I asked for anybody to sign off on it. I mean, it's just like you have to decide for yourself whether you feel like there's going to be something served by changes made at this point. And I mean, I'm not exactly sure how we'd resolve that. I guess we'd work with Ms. Roman and her staff directly to do that, I guess.
Are there any other questions for the applicant? Okay, seeing none. Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Warner.
Thank you.
With that, I'll close the public hearing, open the board for board comment. I guess I'll kick it off and say, at the end of the day, we are deciding whether or not the zoning administrator correctly determined what is the finished side of the fence and whether or not the finished side of the fence is on the front or the outward-facing portion of this particular subject property or on the inward portion of this subject property. Mr. Johannesson.
Thanks, Vice Chair Softly. I guess I'd like to say I support staff findings in this one. When I look at the photos, it looks pretty clear to me which side is finished and one side isn't. I know it's purely aesthetic, but that's the code, the ordinance is pretty clear. The Merriam Dictionary definition seems clear to me, so that's kind of where I'm standing.
All right, thank you for your comments. Ms. Wang?
I'm inclined to also go with staff findings, but I do have kind of a general staff question is when we're talking about the artistic interpretation of design, I think it's really interesting for what he's trying to do with the materials and the way that he's approaching it. So my general question is, what kind of flexibility and modernization does our zoning code allow when we're thinking about new materials, new emerging technology? How do we continuously incorporate those things where we allow those kind of definitions? So, and also the definition of what's finished. But Ms. Roman looks like she wants to say something.
Thank you, Board Member Wang. So in terms of materials, the city code really only regulates that there's a maximum of 2 and that fences are constructed of permanent fencing materials. So we define that as being wood, metal, traditional fencing type materials. Certainly there is discussion with applicants about what that means as materials are coming online that evolve. When vinyl fences became a new thing, we had a discussion about how that works into a permanent fencing material. So really it's just about the longevity of the material that's being installed today. In terms of whether or not it's finished or not, we certainly deal with fences that are what we consider sandwiched, so they do have support structures on both sides, but it would be that they match on both sides of the fencing that really is where staff makes the determination. We do not try to determine based on aesthetics because that is variable from person to person.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Wang. Are there any other comments from the board? They entertain a motion one way or the other.
I would like to make a motion to approve staff findings.
There's been a motion to approve staff findings. Second by Member Wang. Is there any board discussion? Seeing none, will the chair call the vote?
Board Member Callahan?
Aye.
Ingram?
Aye.
Johannesson?
Aye.
Smikarova?
Aye.
Wang?
Aye.
That's 5 yeas and 0 nays.
Okay, and with that, the motion is adopted and the application is denied. You can speak with staff about your options moving forward. Thank you all for coming down here today. This concludes the public business of the board. Let's see, find my agenda here. Do we have an item number 6 on the agenda today? Are there any updates, Mr. Ellis? Okay, with that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Ooh, second.
Then moved in second, all in favor, indicate by aye.
Aye.
Nay? Motion is approved. We are adjourned.